In today's video, I'm going to be talking about one of the most underrated rivalries, in my opinion, and that is the rivalry between Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns. Now, of course, if you've probably noticed by the thumbnail of this video, that it's three matches that, of course, are on the thumbnail, which are three matches that I will be going over in this video alone. Yes, they've had other matches in their underrated, amazing rivalry, but there's three matches that I want to go over because of us being on the road to the Royal Rumble. Is the three matches that they have had against each other at the Royal Rumble show itself. That, of course, is the match in 2017, 2021, and in 2023 as well. Of course, in this video, I'm going to be talking about each match, sort of going over the stories and all that leading up to the matches and everything else. And also, every match was for the Universal or Undisputed Championship, whatever you want to call it. That, of course, is an interesting thing. But there's also an interesting switch in the matches as well from the first match and, of course, the next two matches, mostly with a role switch. We'll get into, of course, to that. I'll talk more about that and everything led up to the matches and what happened after the matches and all that. Just something that I kind of thought of because we were on the road to a Royal Rumble, and every time when I think of the Royal Rumble, I always think about these three matches between these two, especially Kevin Owens, who probably is Mr. Royal Rumble, with, of course, not being in the Royal Rumble match, really, but just who can definitely be put on the Royal Rumble card in a random match or whatever story he's involved in, and puts on an amazing match. I mean, not only just alone the Roman Reigns matches, of course, we saw last year with the ladder match against Cody, and even the year before in the United States Championship match against Logan Paul, if you guys remember that. He, of course, has probably some of my favorite and most underrated matches in the history of the show at the Royal Rumble, and some of my favorite matches that, of course, are not the Royal Rumble matches that, of course, are on the show. So again, that's of course what I'll be talking about here in today's video. Before we get into the video, of course, welcome everybody to the BrewCrew channel. Of course, I do football content as well. This is my first wrestling content video in a while because, of course, been focusing on football and all that. But now, of course, with football sort of not really coming to an end, but like with the LSU and Saints football seasons come to an end, but still going to be doing videos on those. Going to try to focus more on trying to get my wrestling content back out, especially with football season being done. But we'll, of course, still have that and all that. But still don't be doing both football and wrestling content, football with LSU and Saints, and, of course, wrestling content with whatever, of course, mostly with WWE, but sometimes with other wrestling companies as well. Now, to not make this intro much too longer, let's go ahead and get into the video. Before we get into the video, almost forgot, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell for future upcoming videos here on the BrewCrew channel. And now, with that being said and out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the video and get into one of the most underrated rivalries in the history of WWE. Now we're going to go ahead and start off with, of course, these matches. We're first going to start off in 2017 at the 2017 Royal Rumble. Of course, back in 2017, Kevin Owens was mostly a heel, and even though yes, Roman Reigns, who was definitely not liked by a lot of fans, or a good chunk of the fans, was technically the babyface in this rivalry. Now, the rivalry actually started back in 2016 as they had a match against each other at a show called Roadblock End of the Line. Now, also during this time, Kevin Owens was the Universal Champion, if you guys remember. He, of course, was Universal Champion. He just dealt with Seth, hit the rivalry with Seth Rollins, and now, of course, has kindled this new rivalry with Roman Reigns, who at the time was the United States Champion, and also Chris Jericho was involved because, of course, of the alliance between Jericho and Owens as them being best friends. If anybody remembers, of course, that stuff going on. Of course, Chris Jericho would actually intervene himself into the match at End of the Line, and of course actually would cost Roman Reigns the championship, getting Roman Reigns disqualified, making Kevin Owens win. Of course, at the time, Raw General Manager Mick Foley had enough of Chris Jericho getting involved of the championship matches. Of course, also leading up to the Royal Rumble, and there was a 2-on-1 handicap match between Roman, Owens, and Jericho, where Jericho and Owens won the 2-on-1 handicap match, with Jericho getting the pin and Jericho becoming the new United States Champion. That, of course, was one of the things that were leading up to this match, but it was announced by Mick Foley that not only that not only would the match be a no disqualifications match between Owens and Jericho, so any intervention of any sorts doesn't ruin the match and it still goes on, but he also did not want Jericho to try to get involved, so he suspended Jericho in a shark cage. If you guys have never watched a match with a shark cage, I'll pop a picture of Jericho in the shark cage. That is what, of course, it is. So the match was set for Royal Rumble 2017. Kevin Owens defending his Universal Championship against Roman Reigns in a no disqualifications match. And this, of course, was a part of one of my favorite Royal Rumble shows, Royal Rumble 2017. And, of course, this match was really great. There were so many great spots. Of course, extreme spots and all that. I mean, no disqualifications. It was great. Amazing chemistry. It was in San Antonio, of course. It was one of the first times we saw Kevin Owens do the stunner. And, of course, we know he mostly did it because they were in San Antonio paying homage to, of course, Steve Austin, the 3-time Royal Rumble winner himself. And it was a great match altogether. And Jericho did not actually intervene in any sort of way, despite, yes, he did actually throw down some brass knuckles to Kevin Owens. But he did not get involved of stopping Roman from doing anything. But towards the end of the match, Braun Strowman, if you do remember that, of course, in 2017, Strowman and Roman would have a rivalry of sorts, and this would be the one to kick it off. Strowman would get involved in the match, hitting, of course, the power slam through the table in the corner and making Owens cover Roman, getting the win 1-2-3, winning and retaining the Universal Championship. And we know what happened, and mostly they went their separate ways. And we didn't really see them in one-on-one action or in the same ring action, as, of course, Kevin Owens would go on to, of course, have the little run rivalry with Jericho after the short match against Goldberg for WrestleMania. And then, of course, we know Roman dealt with Strowman at Fastlane. Then he went to face Undertaker at WrestleMania. That, of course, was how 2017 went. But, of course, we have to go a couple years later in 2021 to mostly not really 2021. 2020 is technically when you have to go back to see this rivalry sort of rekindle. This rivalry rekindle on the road to TLC 2020. At TLC 2020, the two were matched up against each other in a TLC match, and of course, fun fact, this was the final TLC pay-per-view that WWE ever did. So these two, I believe this was the main event. Of course, this was around the time of Roman Reigns becoming the tribal chief. He, of course, became what he would call himself, the tribal chief, earlier in 2020 when he came back, becoming Universal Champion, having the rivalry with Jay joining him as his right-hand man, and Jay even getting involved in this match to try to help Roman reclaim and still be your Universal Champion. It was a great, of course, TLC match, but we're not focusing more on that. After the TLC match, there was another match the two had, and it was a steel cage match. And this was technically supposed to be the last meeting between the two, because I believe there was a stipulation in the steel cage match that if Roman Reigns won, Kevin Owens would not challenge for the title. As we're on the road to Royal Rumble, there, of course, was the little side story that almost we would have had Adam Pearce. Yes, the right now current Raw general manager Adam Pearce, who was not a general manager. He was definitely working with WWE, like I want to say producer. I can't remember what he really was. But this was before he was the now Raw general manager. There was a story going in between the two that almost we could have had Adam Pearce versus Roman Reigns. But an episode of SmackDown it was. Of course, it was a contract signing between the two, Adam Pearce and Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns signed it. Adam Pearce, of course, I can't remember what Adam Pearce said for some reason, because of course it's been a while. But I definitely remember after he was walking up the ramp and he actually said that he actually is injured. Of course, him being old, haven't wrestled in so long, because he was a former wrestler. He was a former wrestler back in the old NWA days. He was a multi-time world champion with them. But he did actually make Roman Reigns sign the contract, but the contract did not have Adam Pearce's name, or it did, but he actually had someone to replace him because of his injury, and lo and behold, it was Kevin Owens, and the match even had a stipulation, and that was a last man standing match. Kevin Owens came out, he officially signed the contract, and it was official yet again for the second time in their rivalry They would be meeting against each other at the Royal Rumble in a third match of this new rivalry that they had, where Kevin Owens was more of the babyface, facing off against the heel tribal chief Roman Reigns. Now, of course, the last man standing match was amazing as well. An amazing match, of course, even though, yes, it was in the Thunderdome, but it was still an amazing match. Everybody loved it and enjoyed it. It was a great last man standing match. Yes, there was a little bit of a botch at the end, but it definitely did not hurt at all how great this match was and how great the ending was as well. Of course, Roman, however, would be the last man standing and would go on to reclaim and retain his Universal Championship. Now, of course, after this point, Kevin Owens would sort of still be a face, but sort of later on in 2021 would go back to his heel antics going into 2022 as well. And we all know with Roman Reigns, he would continue his dominance as the Universal Champion and the Tribal Chief, even going on to become the undisputed WWE Universal Champion at WrestleMania 38. But also, Kevin Owens would main event the other night of WrestleMania 38, night 1, with Stone Cold, in a dream match that would finally happen for us fans to finally watch. That, of course, was historic for both men on both nights at WrestleMania. But of course, us fans were not knowing that in the middle of this amazing storyline that would also end up involving Sami Zayn of the Bloodline story, we were definitely were not in store for a rekindled rivalry again between Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns. It mostly sort of started with Kevin Owens sort of seeing Sami Zayn have this thought that he, of course, was a member of this family with, of course, the Bloodline, but Owens saw that he is not, that he was just being used by Roman. That's sort of how it went. Of course, if you remember the New Year's show, I believe it was, there was the tag team match where Kevin Owens teamed up with John Cena to face off against Roman and Sami. They got the win. And I think it was a little bit after that match, it was set up for another match between the two, Kevin Owens versus Roman Reigns, this time for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship. So sorry there, I blanked out. For the WWE Undisputed Universal Championship. This time, despite their other two matches being a stipulation with no disqualifications and a last man standing match, this match was just a normal one-on-one match. And a lot of stuff was leading up to this, and the one important thing was, of course, the trust of Sami Zayn with the Bloodline. So Sami Zayn with Paul Heyman were the only two men to go out with Roman. Other thing I do want to that's now remembering that's coming to my mind is Kevin Owens also was involved with this Bloodline stuff back during War Games. So it was actually during War Games back in, I believe, November-ish, is when he technically got back into this Bloodline story and got back into, of course, having the rivalry with Roman Reigns. Now, back to the Royal Rumble. Of course, it was set up, and this match was actually the main event of the show. That is right. I remember watching this show live because the first match of the show was the men's Royal Rumble match where, of course, Cody would come back and win the Royal Rumble. Later on, of course, the main event would be the big-time match between Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns for a third time at the Royal Rumble. And this time, of course, like I said before, was just a normal one-on-one match. And my goodness, even with them not having a stipulation, these two put on an amazing match. I do want to say this, if you have not watched any of these matches, definitely go and watch them. They are so underrated. I feel like a lot of people do not give how much praise to these matches, especially this third match. This third match was amazing. I remember watching it live. It was back and forth. There, of course, was that scary botch by Kevin Owens, but he kind of made up for it again. He made up for it again for a second try. And, of course, there was also the stuff outside with Sami Zayn. Was he going to try to help Roman? Was he actually going to help Kevin, who, of course, yes, was his bitter enemy, but was still his best friend deep down? Of course, we all know during the match, Kevin Owens would, of course, lose, Roman Reigns would win, and still be your champion. But that's not what happened after the match. The match wasn't just he held the titles high and they went home. No, he wanted to see Sami Zayn's his full commitment to the Bloodline. So the Usos come out, they attack Kevin Owens, Solo also, I believe, as well, and they cuff Kevin Owens to the ropes. being him cuffed to the ropes, you see Jimmy and Jay just hitting super kick after super kick after super kick on him, and Roman comes in with a chair. I believe it's Roman or Solo, one of the two. I can't remember vividly, but of course he hands Sammy the chair, and he says, "Hit him." He wants Sammy to hit Kevin to show his loyalty to not only to the bloodline and to the family. He wants to be able to show. Wants Sammy to show his loyalty to him as the tribal chief. Of course, you see him kind of crying because he doesn't want to do it, because he still deep down still cares for Kevin, still loves Kevin, because of course he even though bitter enemies for a long time, they were longtime friends before it, and they were still are. And of course Roman sees it. Roman sort of pushes him around, saying stop crying, hit him, turns back around, pointing, talking to Kevin, and of course, if you know what I'm about to say, and I still will never get out of my head every time when I rewatch it, and especially go back to when I watched this live, Sami Zayn hits him in the back, hits Roman in the back, be clear, hits Roman Reigns in the back with the chair, and you just hear the crowd go crazy. Even I was going crazy, just my jaw was on the ground. Of course, goosebumps right now thinking about the moment. Of course, Jimmy and Jay are just so shocked, especially Jay, because we know what happened with that. That's a whole different story. Just seeing that happen, and then of course he is attacked. The honorary Uso shirt is being ripped off of him, and he is just left laying there after being beat up by Roman and the Usos. And of course, we all know what happened after that. Sami Zayn getting involved with at Elimination Chamber, and then him and Owens getting back together as friends, now as a team, to go on to win the Tag Team Championships in the main event of WrestleMania Night 1 against the Usos. Don't want to kind of get too much more into that, but that of course does end right now at this point. Don't know if they'll have one more in them or whatever. In my opinion, one of the most underrated rivalries in the history of WWE, in my opinion. They've had other great matches that were not at the Royal Rumble, but the 3 Royal Rumble matches were some of the best. So that, of course, is where I'll technically end. I honestly this was all off the top of my head that I was making this video, because I just thought about it like not that too long ago before I started recording this video. Because I wanted to try to do something since we were on the road to Royal Rumble, and I thought about this underrated rivalry, and I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to share my opinion. Honestly, again, like I said before, if you guys have not watched these matches, I highly recommend go to watch these matches, especially the third match. My favorite out of the 3 is the third match, but all 3 of them are great, even the 2 with the stipulation. But just the regular one-on-one match, and even after the match, whether you watch the show or whether you watch the match on YouTube, if it does show on YouTube after the match, watch it, listen to the crowd goes crazy. I highly recommend you watch these matches. Now, of course, again, this is where I'm going to go ahead and end off this video. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of this video. Let me know y'all's thoughts on this rivalry in each match that I talked about as well. And let me know your guys' underrated rivalries. What's a rivalry in your guys' mind that is underrated? Definitely let me know in the comments down below. If you made it all the way to this point of the video, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed the video, you guys know, as always, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell for future upcoming videos here on the BrewCrew channel. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.